Madame Rajavi, ladies and gentlemen, and brave residents of Camp Liberty. As many of you know, I've been here before, have had the honor of these microphones, of this podium before, too many times before, because each time we gather, we call for the release of the people of Ashraf and Liberty, and we call for regime change. And yet, as often as I've been here, this time somehow is strange for me. And it's strange for me because I, as a Jew, am on the eve of the celebration of a festival of freedom, Passover, that my people celebrate every year. And some of you may know the story of Passover. The Jews were slaves in Egypt under a cruel Pharaoh. And he, like the cruel people in Tehran, and then agreed to let them go. And of course, he double-crossed everybody, like the mullahs in Tehran, and sent an army after them. But then a miraculous thing happened. They came to the sea. The army was pursuing them. The seas parted. They crossed the sea. And then the sea came back and consumed the army that was pursuing them, and so they escaped to freedom. Divine intervention. The seas parted and then came back to swallow the pursuing army. Now, I wonder whether at the time that was going on in ancient Egypt, whether there were people in other countries around said, "Oh, please, let's not irritate the Pharaoh. Let's negotiate with him. Let's be nice to him. Maybe he'll make working conditions better for the slaves." Somehow, if there was such a person, he didn't make it into the Bible. It's a story that can inspire and does inspire, but there's a danger. There's a danger in drawing inspiration from that story. For one thing, the Iranian people, unlike my people in Egypt, are not slaves in a foreign country. They're slaves in their own country under a cruel regime. And for another thing, we can't sit back and wait for divine intervention. We have to face the fact that today, if God is going to act, he's going to have to act through people. And the Iranian people understand that. They rose up in 2009. And what happened? The people in positions of leadership elsewhere in the world did nothing. Well, you know, there was another time when my people faced the tyranny, and the people in a position of power to do something about it did nothing. And there was no divine intervention that time. And 6 million of them died at the hands of the Nazis. And those who did nothing at the time have gone down in history and infamy. And all the passage of time and all the good deeds by those people could not wash that out. They were infamous then, they're infamous now. We have an obligation now to make sure that we get those in our own day who are in a position to do something about it, to act and not to rely on divine intervention. And first on the list of those we have to get to act is my own government. We gave our word in 2003. We gave our word that the people of Ashraf would be treated as protected persons under the Geneva Convention. We distributed ID cards. You saw with your own eyes what those ID cards were worth, what effect they had on bullets and on Humvees. As we sit here, the Iraqi government, which is doing the bidding of its surrogates and which is being the surrogate of the government of Iran, are testing whether they can get away with extraditing people from Camp Liberty to Iran. But let me tell you something. We're here to complicate their lives and the lives of all of those in the United States government who have so far failed to get on the right side of things, to get on God's side of things here. So this really is a good time for me to be here, because at a gathering like this, I and we can all draw strength from you. Strength to go back and to tell our government that it has to have the strength to resist and not to obey promises, not to follow promises, and that we will not follow promises unless and until our government acts. Strength to tell our government that until everyone can celebrate a festival of freedom, then nobody really can. There's no biblical record of whether regime change was achieved in Egypt after the Jews left. But we have to be more ambitious than Moses was at that time, because we have to achieve regime change. Because the Iranians are not slaves in a foreign country, they're slaves in their own country, and we have to liberate that country. And we have to help them liberate it. And the only way that they're going to liberate it is if they celebrate their freedom under a new regime. So if we draw inspiration from a biblical story, it has to be inspiration to act ourselves, to be the instrument of divine will under a will that seeks freedom. Seeing you here and hearing Mrs. Rajavi and seeing that film reminds us that we have an obligation and we have it in our power to do that. I pledge to you that we will act and that we will do all in our power to get others to act, and that we will stand with those who stand until the end. Thank you very much.